We've all been there, just trying to navigate life. But what if that chance encounter led to something extraordinary? This story will warm your heart and make you believe in the power of kindness and love. The rain was coming down in sheets, blurring the streetlights into hazy halos as I trudged through the city. My name's Tom, and I was 34, single, and bone-tired from a double shift at the hospital. My scrubs clung to my skin, soaked through, and my sneakers squelched with every step. It was one of those nights where the world felt heavy, like it was pressing down on my shoulders. I just wanted to get home, peel off my wet clothes, and collapse into bed. I was cutting through the Parker shortcut I'd taken 100 times when I saw him. He was slumped on a bench, no umbrella, no coat, just a thin hoodie pulled tight over his head. The rain plastered his clothes to his frame, and even from a distance, I could tell he was shivering. Something about the way he sat, hunched and still, made my stomach twist. I should have kept walking. I was exhausted, and strangers in parks at midnight aren't exactly screaming safe bet. But my feet stopped moving like they'd made the decision for me. "Hey," I called out, my voice barely cutting through the rain. "You okay?" He didn't look up at first. I stepped closer, close enough to see the way his hands gripped his knees, knuckles pale. His hoodie was dark, maybe navy, with frayed cuffs, and his jeans were ripped at one nin. Not the stylish kind, but the kind that comes from wear. I couldn't see his face, but something about him felt fragile, like he was holding himself together by sheer will. "I'm fine," he mumbled, voice low and rough, like he hadn't spoken in hours. He still didn't look at me. "You don't look fine," I said, softer this time. "It's pouring. You're gonna freeze out here." He finally lifted his head, and I got my first good look at him. He was younger than me, maybe late 20s, with dark hair plastered to his forehead and eyes that were too tired for someone his age. They were a deep brown, almost black in the dim light, and they carried a weight I couldn't quite place, grief, maybe, or fear. His jaw was sharp, stubbled, and his lips were pressed into a thin line, like he was biting back something he didn't want to say. "I don't have anywhere to go," he said, so quietly I almost missed it. The words hit me like a punch. I'd seen enough people at the hospital to know what desperation sounded like, but this was different. This was raw, unguarded, like he'd given up on hiding it. I don't know why I did it. Maybe it was the nurse in me, or maybe it was just that. I'd been where he was, not literally, but that kind of lost. "Come on," I said, nodding toward the path. "My place is a couple blocks away. You can dry off, get warm, no strings." He stared at me, those dark eyes searching my face like he was waiting for the catch. I didn't blame him. People don't just offer help like that, not in this city. But after a long moment, he nodded, slow and hesitant, and stood up. He was taller than I'd thought, lanky but solid, like he'd been athletic once but hadn't eaten right in a while. "I'm Tom," I said as we started walking. "Eli," he replied, barely audible over the rain. We didn't talk much on the way to my apartment. The rain filled the silence, and I was too tired to push him for answers he clearly wasn't ready to give. My place wasn't much a one-bedroom, with mismatched furniture and a fridge that hummed too loud, but it was dry, and it was warm. I handed him a towel and a pair of sweatpants that were too big for him, then pointed him to the bathroom. "Take your time," I said. "I'll make some coffee." He disappeared into the bathroom, and I busied myself in the kitchen, trying not to think too hard about what I was doing. Inviting a stranger into my home wasn't exactly my style, but there was something about Eli that made me want to help. Maybe it was the way he'd looked at me, like he was surprised anyone had noticed him at all when he came out. His hair was still damp but pushed back, and my sweatpants hung loose on his hips. He looked less like a drowned rat and more like a person now, though his eyes still had that guarded edge. He sat on the couch, clutching the mug of coffee I'd handed him like it was a lifeline. "Thanks," he said, staring into the mug. "You didn't have to do this." "I know," I said, sitting across from him in my beat-up armchair, "but I wanted to." He didn't say anything for a while, just sipped the coffee, his fingers trembling slightly. I didn't push. I'd learned in the ER that sometimes people need space to feel safe before they open up. Instead, I told him a little about myself, nothing heavy, just that I was a nurse, that I'd lived in the city for a decade, that I hated the rain but loved the way it made the streets quiet. Small stuff, just to fill the air. Eventually, he started talking. His name was Elias, but he went by Eli. He was 28, and he'd been in the city for a few months, crashing on couches until those ran out. He didn't say why he'd left wherever he was before, but I caught the way his voice tightened when he mentioned home. There was a story there, one he wasn't ready to tell, and I didn't ask that we talked until the rain slowed to a drizzle and the clock on my wall ticked. Past 2 a.m. I offered him the couch for the night, and he accepted, though I could tell he wasn't used to kindness without strings. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. I didn't know what, not yet, but I felt it a pull, like a tide I hadn't noticed until I was already caught in it. Over the next few weeks, Eli became a fixture in my life. He didn't have anywhere else to go, and I didn't have the heart to send him back to that bench. He stayed on my couch, and bit by bit, I learned more about him. He was sharp, with a dry sense of humor that caught me off guard and made me laugh harder than I had in years. He loved old jazz records and could talk for hours about Coltrane or Davis, his face lighting up in a way that made my chest ache. He was good with his hands, too. Fixed my leaky faucet one afternoon without me asking, like it was no big deal. But there was a shadow over him, something he carried in the way he flinched at sudden noises or got quiet when I asked about his past. I didn't push, but I noticed things. The way he always sat with his back to a wall. The way he'd check his phone like he was waiting for bad news. I wanted to know more, but I also wanted him to feel safe, so I let him set the pace. One night, about a month after we met, we were sitting on my tiny balcony, sharing a pizza and watching the city lights. The air was cool, and Eli had one of my hoodies on, the sleeves too long for him. He looked softer out here, less guarded, his dark hair falling into his eyes as he laughed at some dumb story I told about a patient who'd insisted on doing yoga in the ER. "You're different, you know," he said suddenly, his voice quiet, but steady. "Most people, they don't see you unless you're useful to them. But you saw me, that night in the park." I didn't know what to say. My heart was pounding, and I wasn't sure why. "I just couldn't walk past you," I admitted. "Something told me you needed someone." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I felt exposed in a way I hadn't in years. "I did," he said. "I still do." The air between us shifted, heavy with something unspoken. I wanted to reach for him, to close the distance, but I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I smiled, trying to keep it light. "Well, you're stuck with me now." He laughed, soft and real, and it was the best sound I'd heard in a long time. That moment on the balcony was the start of something. We didn't talk about it, not directly, but things changed. We started cooking together, crowding into my tiny kitchen and arguing over spices. He'd tease me about my terrible knife skills, and I'd nudge him with my shoulder, pretending to be annoyed. We'd sit on the couch after dinner, watching old movies, our knees brushing as we passed the popcorn back and forth. It was small, quiet, but it felt big. I was falling for him. I knew it, even if I didn't say it out loud. I'd been out since I was 19, but this felt different. With Eli, it wasn't just attraction, it was the way he made me feel seen, too. Like I wasn't just Tom, the nurse, always taking care of everyone else. With him, I could just be. But there was a wall between us, one I couldn't quite figure out. He'd let me in, but only so far. Sometimes I'd catch him staring out the window, his face tight with worry, and I'd know he was somewhere else, somewhere I couldn't reach. I wanted to ask, to help, but I was scared of pushing him away. One evening, we were walking back from the corner store, bags of groceries swinging between us. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, and I was teasing him about his obsession with spicy chips. He was laughing, his head tipped back, when he suddenly stopped, his face going pale. I followed his gaze and saw a man across the street, staring at us. Older, broad-shouldered, with a face like he'd forgotten how to smile. "Eli," I said, touching his arm. He flinched hard, and I dropped my hand. "I need to go," he said, his voice tight. He turned and started walking, fast, back toward my apartment. I followed, my heart racing, questions piling up in my head. When we got inside, he sank onto the couch, his hands shaking. I sat next to him, close but not touching, giving him space. "Who was that?" I asked, keeping my voice soft. He didn't answer for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "My brother, he's not a good person." I wanted to ask more, but the look on his face stopped me. Instead, I reached out, slow and careful, and put my hand over his. "You're safe here," I said. "Okay." He looked at me, his eyes bright with something I couldn't name, fear, maybe, but also something warmer, something that made my heart stutter. "I don't deserve you," he said, so quiet I almost missed it. "You do," I said, and I meant it. That night, he didn't sleep on the couch. He followed me to my room, hesitant, like he was waiting for me to change my mind. I didn't. We lay there in the dark, not touching, just breathing in the same space. It was enough, for now. The weeks after that night were a mix of light and shadow. Eli started opening up, bit by bit, like a book I was learning to read. He told me about growing up in a small town, where everyone knew everyone's business. His family was strict, religious, the kind of people who thought love was a sin if it didn't fit their rules. He'd left at 18, couch surfing across states, trying to outrun the weight of their judgment. His brother, the one we'd seen, was the worst of them, mangry, controlling, the kind of person who'd rather break you than let you go. "I thought I could start over here," Eli said one night, his head resting on my shoulder as we sat on the couch. But he found me. He always does. I held him a little tighter, my jaw clenched. I wanted to fix it, to keep him safe, but I didn't know how. All I could do was be there, steady and solid, until he trusted me enough to lean on me. We were careful after that, sticking to quieter streets, avoiding the places where his brother might show up. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours, fragile, precious thing we were building together. We'd spend evenings cooking, laughing over burnt pancakes, or arguing about whose playlist was better. He'd steal my hoodies, claiming they were warmer than his, and I'd pretend to be annoyed, even though I loved seeing him in them. The first time we kissed, it was an accident. We were in the kitchen, elbow deep in dishes, when he flicked soap suds at me. I laughed, flicked some back, and suddenly we were standing too close, the air electric. His eyes met mine, and before I could think, I leaned in. His lips were soft, hesitant at first, then sure, like he'd been waiting for this as long as I had. When we pulled back, he smiled, shy and real, and I knew I was gone. "I've wanted to do that for a while," he admitted, his cheeks pink. "Me too," I said, and kissed him again. From then on, it was like a dam had broken. We couldn't keep our hands off each other, not in a reckless way, but in the quiet, desperate way of two people who'd been alone for too long. A brush of fingers, a hand on the small of my back, a kiss pressed to my temple when he thought. I wasn't paying attention. It was intoxicating, but it was also terrifying. I'd never felt this much for anyone, and it scared me how much I stood to lose. Eli started looking for work, determined to pull his weight. He landed a job at a record store, and I'd stop by on my days off, watching him sort vinyls with a focus that made my heart swell. He was good at it, charming customers with his quick wit and easy smile. Seeing him come alive like that, finding his place in the world, made me believe we could make this work. But his brother was always there, a shadow we couldn't shake. Eli's phone would buzz with texts he wouldn't let me see, and I'd catch him staring out the window, his jaw tight. I wanted to protect him, to fix it, but I didn't know how. All I could do was hold him close and hope it was enough. One night we were lying in bed, the city quiet outside. He was curled against me, his head on my chest, and I could feel the tension in him, like a wire pulled tight. "I'm scared," he whispered. "Not of you, of this, of losing it." I kissed the top of his head, my throat tight. "You're not gonna lose me," I said. "We're in this together." He didn't say anything, but his arms tightened around me, and I knew he believed me, at least for now. As the months passed, we settled into a rhythm. We weren't perfect. There were fights, small ones, about stupid things like whose turn it was to do the dishes, or why I worked too many hours. But we always found our way back to each other, usually with a sheepish apology and a kiss that lingered a little too long. Eli started talking about the future, something he hadn't done before. He wanted to go back to school, maybe study music or art, something that made his eyes light up. I encouraged him, helped him look up programs, even offered to cover the application fees. It felt good, building something together, something solid. But his brother was still out there. One day, Eli came home from work, his face pale, his hands shaking. He was at the store, he said, his voice flat. He didn't say anything, just stood there. I pulled him into a hug, my heart pounding. "We'll figure this out," I said, even though I wasn't sure how. "I promise." That night, we made a plan. We'd move, not far, just to a different part of the city, somewhere his brother wouldn't think to look. It was a risk, but it felt like the only way to keep Eli safe. We spent weeks packing, sorting through our lives, deciding what to keep and what to let go. It was hard, but it was also hopeful, like we were starting fresh, the day we moved. The sun was out, the sky clear for the first time in weeks. Eli was quieter than usual, but there was a lightness to him, like a weight had lifted, as we carried boxes into our new placer, small, sunny apartment with a view of the river. He grabbed my hand, pulling me close. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick, "for seeing me, for staying." I kissed him, slow and sure, and for the first time, I felt like we were going to be okay. We weren't running anymore. We were building something real, something worth fighting for. And no matter what came next, we'd face it together.